So please visit powwows. All of them are a little bit different. Some are more tribal connected. This is an intertribal powwow, which means, yes, the Abenaki people are hosting it because it's their land, but there is a lot of other nations involved here. And we're all trying to, do that all together.
As the archaeologist at Strawberybank, I'm responsible for our collection of over 1.1 million artifacts. The vast majority of those are artifacts from the late 17th century through the 20th century from Euro-American residents of the neighborhood, but a few dozen are materials or belongings left behind by the Abenaki people from this region. Some of them date to over 10,000 years ago, some of them date to the period just before European contact. So it's a huge range showing us the real longevity of Abenaki presence in this region.
This is the first year of this powwow, and for being the first time, the atmosphere, the environment is absolutely warm, welcoming, and wonderful. I'm getting amazing energy from it, and I'm definitely coming back next year. And I'm a critic when it comes to powwows, and I'm very excited that there will be more people probably next year because of the word of mouth of how good this powwow went.
Excellent. And so how's your experience been with the museum so far here?
Very welcoming. I wish I had more time to go walk around because of the history. I'm a history buff, and how they maintained the area of the museum is just astounding.
Between 10 and 12,000 years ago, this landscape was a recently cleared, glaciated landscape. So like kind of open tundra, lots of megafauna. That's the time of like the mammoths and giant beavers. So we see a lot of large stone tools, spear points and knives for butchering those large megafauna. As the landscape became more forested over time, it wasn't as practical to use spears because there were trees in the way. So we saw the development of bow and arrow technology, which is why archaeologists, you'll hear us say projectile point versus arrowhead more often, because sometimes it's a spear, sometimes it's an arrowhead. And so we see the shape of those tools change for hunting different game. We also see, as people get more and more established in regions and they're not following herds of animals around the landscape, that they are starting to trade with one another. So one of our projectile points in the Strawberybank collection is made of Pennsylvania jasper, a material from the area we know today as the state of Pennsylvania, indicating that they were trading over quite a large distance. And then a little later, after the advent of horticulture, when people are starting to tend crops and really stay put in a region more permanently, we see the introduction of ceramic pots and vessels that they would have used for cooking or for storing seeds and grains that just wouldn't have been practical back in the days that they were having to travel over large distances. So clay pots, which we have several sherds of clay pots in our collection, let us know people were really settling in here.
So generally the Abenaki their territory was made up of all of Vermont, New Hampshire, northern Massachusetts, western Maine, and southern Quebec. The Mohegan tribe of Abenaki specifically is the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont and all of northern New Hampshire.
Excellent. So what are your thoughts on here today at this powwow?
I think it's a good idea. I was very happy when they asked us to take part as part of the Portsmouth 400th anniversary. So the museum wanted to add some indigenous input, and then some other organizers decided to have a powwow and kind of a general outreach of all native cultures.
So it has been a goal of mine since I arrived to see more educational material, more programming, more presence for Indigenous people here at Strawberybank. And because it's a really site-specific museum, it isn't the easiest thing to say like, oh, well, we'll just interpret the Abenaki family who lived in this or that house, because we know that they weren't Abenaki families who lived in our houses. But the archaeological evidence and oral histories tell us that people used this area largely seasonally. They'd come here in the summer months, a lot like people come to Portsmouth for vacation today. And so a powwow is, to me, a perfect modern example of an encampment. We have vendors and dancers who are camping here this weekend, and it's an intertribal gathering space, so it really echoes the way that people used the space hundreds and thousands of years ago. But it helps at the same time remind people that Abenaki people are still here, and that their traditions have changed, and they've adopted new traditions and found new ways to educate people, just like every culture changes over time. So it doesn't anchor Abenaki people only in that pre-contact past, but connects us to the pre-contact past and into the future as well.
Hi, I'm Alan Whitney. I'm over from Haven, Vermont. I'm a settler. Set up my tent here at the powwow here at Strawberybank Museum. I've been lucky, all the storms have gone around us. It's been a nice weekend, and everybody's having a good time.
If you are curious about any kind of culture, also talk about indigenous, don't be afraid to ask. We're always wonderful and usually very happy to be able to answer. If you ever have a chance to come to a powwow, please come, because you will be able to not only experience it firsthand, you'll get to experience the food, the music, the dancing. When it's called a powwow, it's intertribal, and everybody's always welcome, so please come.
Anyone interested in indigenous culture, many people are more than happy to ask or to answer questions that you ask. Never be afraid to ask. If you see local powwows or gatherings or events that are published publicly, I always encourage people to go, and same thing just like here today, ask people, and we're always more than happy to answer any questions you have.